Welcome everybody to the second TET Dialogue webinar for this year. This first year we've been dedicating them to the Inspire Future Generation Award winners and being given an opportunity for them to talk about their projects that won an award this year or as a whole practice. So we are really pleased to have that opportunity to hear about those projects. The topics today is neighborhoods. And what we're really trying to look at is how using play and greening as long-term changes. What are the key things that make those changes? So how can play and greening reshape the everyday spaces we often overlook? And explore community-led approaches to neighborhood regeneration, where underused routes, public spaces, and residential edges are transformed into greener, safer, and more playful, welcome places. So the featured projects actually span strategic neighborhood planning, play retrofit of neglected spaces, and participatory design process that place children and residents at the heart of decision-making. So from developing long-term community strategies to prototyping and delivering permanent improvements, including planting, lighting, seating, and playful interventions, these initiatives demonstrate how small collaborative actions can lead to lasting social and economic change. So today we're joined by three groups. First of all is James Perry, who's an architecture planner and co-founder of Harper Perry. Also alongside is Hannah Marsden, who's founder member of Dwellbeing Sheffield. And also Zouhal Younis, who is from also Dwellbeing Shieldfield and is a final year international relations and political student with a keen interest in global affairs. The next group will be Cathal Mulry, who's director of A Playful City. And this is specializing in creative public and stakeholder engagement for built environment projects. And lastly will be Ramsey Yassa, founder of NOOMA Studios. Is the founding director of this award-winning architecture firm, an interdisciplinary practice of architects and creators with a heartfelt connection to London. So we have a really good mixture of projects today, and I would like to now hand over to our first speaker, James Perry. So James, would you like to take the lead?
My name's Hannah. I'm the program worker at Dwellbeing Shieldfield. Hi, my name is Zouhal and I'm an undergrad student, and I used to work as a traineeship for Dwellbeing.
And my name's James Perry. I'm an architect and planner and one of the founders of Harper Perry.
So to give you some context of Shieldfield, Shieldfield is a multicultural inner city neighborhood in Newcastle in the northeast of England with a population of around 4,200 people since the 2021 census. And it has significantly changed in the recent years. The area has seen a population increase of about 170%, largely driven by the growth of student accommodation. This has had a clear impact on the demographics, with the number of 15 to 24-year-olds more than doubling over the past decade. As a result, Shieldfield has become a more transient area with a high turnover of residents. It remains a very diverse community, including long-term residents, young families, students, and also refugees and asylum seekers. However, there are also challenges, with around 26% of children living in poverty, showing that inequality is still a key issue in the area. So Dwellbeing Shieldfield is a community-led cooperative led by people who live and work and play in Shieldfield. And our aim is for community members to play an active role in shaping life in the neighbourhood. We began in 2017 as the research project to build knowledge about the issues affecting us. And together we deliver 3 programs of activity. Flourishing Together creates education, community development, and social opportunities. This includes things like a community archive, a food project, a craft group, an English conversation group, and weekly walks and meetups. Shieldfield Youth Programme empowers young people to become active members of the Shieldfield community through youth-led activity centred on creativity, solidarity, social and economic justice.
And this is run in partnership with an artist-led community, the New Bridge Project. And lastly, the shielding programme encourages people to understand and care for Shieldfield's public spaces and include all voices in decision-making. And this really is about rebuilding a connection to land and place that was previously lost. With over 180 adult members and 110 children and young people on the youth programme. Our membership reflects the demographic diversity of the neighbourhood that Zouhal described. The initial phase surfaced a lot of grief and anger about the rapid pace of development and the loss of community assets. Residents felt that they had been excluded from policy making and decisions to concentrate a lot of purpose-built student accommodation in this area, and Dwellbeing emerged out of this context. We've developed a structure and governance to ensure that our activities are rooted in the expressed needs and interests of the community. We operate through working groups and shaping Shieldfield conversations, which include people from across the whole community and allows them to share experiences, express their feelings and ideas, and shape future actions. We've observed that the majority of working group members are women from a range of cultural backgrounds. They're leading the walks, organising events, doing catering, gardening, tidying up, and through this building confidence and a capacity in the community to affect change in Shieldfield. The youth programme also does an amazing job of making sure that voices and ideas of young people are heard.
So to just put the project into a little bit of context, as Hannah says, the project commenced in 2017 as a research project. And from that phase of sort of listening and learning from the community, we developed phase 2, which was developing a strategic plan for Shieldfield. And this came about from conversations and walkabouts we began in the early pandemic days with the urban design team and highways and active travel at Newcastle City Council. We sort of left with fairly generic planning policies. And so we've sort of used it as a very positive, proactive way of sort of championing for a community-led plan. So like I say, it was developed during the pandemic and it was led by 2 young urban design traineeships. They were employed through Dwellbeing to work with Harper and develop a baseline for the project. So we commenced work looking at, we set a framework for understanding how we might map the spaces in between the buildings and assess them in terms of their quality and improvements. And from that, developed a set of ambitions for the wider area. And we structured this through the strategic plan, which is it's quite a light touch document, but it focuses on housing, existing and new opportunities, community and local economy, the environment and ecology, and services, transport and infrastructure. So it's all about clearly articulating space for Dwellbeing and the community in future decision-making in that vacuum left by the planning system. And it's essentially putting down the community's position on various subjects, but also we've used it as an opportunity to build bridges with existing council departments who would otherwise be working in the area.
So for the process, we've done several events, but I'll highlight 3 key events that highlight the project's approach. Firstly, workshops with the youth programme focused on reimagining the makerspace through clay modelling sessions. It helped us understand how it was used and identifying issues around accessibility, inclusivity such as gender use in the space. This became the foundation for the design proposals. Secondly, working with the traineeship, as I did, we ran on-site co-design sessions using simple items such as using chalk and rope to physically map ideas we had planned onto the space. This allowed young people to directly shape the layout and feel a sense of ownership.
So one of the key lessons that we've learned is this sort of Section 106 conundrum. For those unfamiliar, that's the planning gain collected from large developments. We know there's about £1 million a decade on from when this student housing boom occurred in the area and fundamentally transformed it for the long term. But actually accessing it and spending it, we've sort of made it our own goal to formulate pathways to accessing that money. We know there are barriers to that. We're always told that we need to bring ideas forward, but they will only be considered at a sort of a high level of technical resolution, which costs lots of money and lots of technical support and is a high risk. We know there is a better model that's possible. So like I say, hoping to demonstrate a pathway for this. I think one of the best things we found is, to borrow a friend of mine, he has this phrase, design allies. So that's like people who sort of buy into a project and champion what you do. So we've made some really great relationships within the local authority. And there are officers who are just not going to put their words behind the project, but put funding to mobilise because everything costs. And so we're in that sort of phase of development at the moment.
Yeah. And I think through the traineeship, I gained lots of experience in development. Three key skills I learned through the traineeship would be community engagement. I learned how to plan and deliver activities that were accessible and inclusive for different groups of people. And secondly, I also developed communication and teamwork skills by working in a multidisciplinary team. And thirdly, I would say I developed a more reflective practice by thinking about what worked and what didn't work. And I would say overall, the traineeship helped me grow both personally and professionally, giving me the confidence to take on more responsibility and play an active role in shaping the community project.
And for Dwellbeing and our members, this is a long and slow process. So we're really aware of the risk of participant fatigue, people getting tired of being asked the same questions and just wanting to see real change happening. So we've developed ways with our members to keep the momentum going, and we've developed rhythms and cycles of things like community events, monthly litter picks, seasonal solstice celebrations and harvest festivals, just to keep it feeling active and people can see that things are happening. But one of the challenges has been the precarity of the funding landscape over this time period, especially when this is such long-term work that isn't easily packaged into kind of neat, discrete projects.
So I think the big question is, so what's next? It's a long-term project, and I think that's very much about Dwellbeing's attitude. The current phase, we're in a mobilisation stage, looking to complete it around about 2027. Like I said, there's a number of activities. We've come to focus. We had a number of long-listed areas. We've come to focus around what's known as the MUGA, the multi-use gaming area. It sits right in the centre of Shieldfield. It was built, actually, ironically, with Section 106 money when the first round of student housing was built, but there's also a lot of issues around this area. And so we're looking at developing plans. Initial things that are going to be happening, we'll be installing a cabin, which is going to become a base on the site. We'll be running sort of designing and making activities with residents and close working with the youth group throughout the summer. We'll be testing ideas. We were hosting picnics, games, community celebrations. There's a very hotly contested football tournament that happens every year. But it's more using it as a trial and testing base and building up a bit of data about what works on the site. And yeah, we've been lucky enough to secure some funding through, it's actually come tangentially through active travel within the City Council. We've got 2 rounds of funding, one to take toward planning. So we're looking at reworking the area of the MUGA and the space around it to make it more diverse in terms of its uses, but also we're going to be looking at active travel. We sit along this road, Napier Street, running east-west, which is an active travel corridor, currently sort of full of cars that are parked. And hope we're doing some work to dismantle the MUGA, which is a bit of a cage. So lots of ongoing ideas, but like I say, it's a very long-term project. Yeah, thank you very much for your time, everyone. I'll stop that presentation there. Wonderful.
Thanks very much, James, and everyone. I think just before we move on is that it's the long-term projects are really difficult because, as you say, there's the funding is not all up front. If you're getting Section 106, it's great, but it takes a lot of effort to take that through. So I think within the current conversation, especially about housing and making places, I think this is one of the issues when we're looking at long-term developments. How do you retain that? And it's really interesting to hear the organization that's actually trying to see this as a community as well. So it's when you've gone in a way that's still there. So that's really an interesting aspect of it. So the next one is Carl Mulry. So if you'd like to take the floor, and I would love to hear about Playful City. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks, Victoria. I will share my screen and hopefully that will be seen. If someone can let me know that it's there, then I'll continue on. Yeah. Hello, my name is Cathal. I said earlier, I'm a director with Playful City. So we're a transdisciplinary practice. often working with the local authorities and finding bottom-up approaches for kind of co-design solutions for public space. So this particular project, Love Our Laneways, is a community-led regeneration of Pierce Drive laneway in Sallynoggin in South Dublin, known locally as The Gaps. This is a 400-metre laneway and had long been overlooked due to poor lighting, uneven surfacing and antisocial behaviour. The project sought to transform it into a safe, green, playful connector linking homes, schools, sports clubs that are close to it, and community facilities. So creating a space to walk through, but also to stay, meet and play. So I'll take you through, I suppose, what was done, who we worked with, what we found out, some of the playful tools that we used, and some reflections post the project as well. So this is some of the existing kind of what was previously there of this kind of long laneway. And this is a kind of a before and after, a quick glimpse of, I suppose, what I'll be showing you a lot more pictures of as well. So key partners, I wouldn't be showing you this project without others. And it was led by ourselves, the Playful City, in partnership with Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council, the National Transport Authority, and local residents and community. Partnerships were also done with the very nearby Institute of Art, Design and Technology, and the Sallynoggin College of Further Education, and now the Dublin College of Further Education and Training. So this kind of added student creativity and capacity, but in ensuring that the process was kind of rooted in kind of local knowledge and fresh ideas as well. So to encourage this kind of local participation, students in the BA in visual communications at that kind of design college submitted concepts and graphics for the visual aesthetics of the Love Our Laneways project. The final design was made by a student called Maya Brown, whose characters and graphics and concepts represent, I suppose, community and the importance of multidisciplinary approaches to reimagining public space where both the council and locals can learn from each other. So I'll go through a kind of a phased approach. This is what we did on the project, so it's going to be quite linear. It was structured into 5 phases that moved from research and listening through to prototyping and delivering. Phase 0 was about establishing parameters. So this phase set out foundations through multiple site visits, policy reviews, baseline metrics, and stakeholder mapping. Local elected members were briefed quite early on to secure political alignment, and partnerships with local third-level institutes ensured student input. So a key challenge actually at this stage was to kind of manage expectations so we could clarify that this was a phased pilot rather than an immediate physical upgrade. So this kind of clear communication, analysis of the community, political buy-in, and knowing our constraints and opportunities helped move the project into the next phase. So where we could meet the community with honesty and knowing what those parameters are. So phase 1 was where we kind of started reaching to the community. So we did door-to-door surveys, household conversations, initial workshops that captured baseline perceptions of safety, accessibility, and play. At the time, it was noted that older residents prioritized seating and lighting, while young people wanted to travel playfully. What was important is reaching the quieter voices of these communities. They did not really typically attend public events, and this is overcome through direct surveys, home visits, and we installed this kind of hyper-local project post box on the lane, allowing for gathering of surveys, gathering awareness of the project, and kind of slowing the speed of consultation to suit the area. This phase largely started to address this kind of traditional consultation paradigm, often kind of historically seen in Ireland as well, where the local authority and communities have historically been polar opposites, or it's a kind of a me versus you. Whereas we wanted to foster that kind of a participatory process where collaboration is used to tackle a common goal. So phase 2, kind of brainstorming together. So this explored ideas collectively. So a Christmas pop-up, trial lighting, greening, and play prototypes. Quite messy, quite spontaneous at times, but we gathered feedback during this event. Young people tested temporary play features and provided live reactions. Students and resident workshops refined themes discovered in phase 0 and 1. The pop-up format created an approachable, low barrier opportunity for participation and helped demonstrate, I suppose, that the built environment and consultation for that can be playful and communal. At the end of this phase, we collated everything, and these kind of 3 core themes kind of emerged. So this became our framework then for conversation, for further outreach and engagement planned for phase 3. So thinking and trialing together. So this was kind of deepening this idea of co-creation. Workshops with St. Kevin's primary school children, local youth groups, older persons bingo groups, and general community meetings captured detailed ideas from an intergenerational perspective. Conversations with the community could now be had about specific interventions based on community feedback. So these particular images show traffic calming measures that could be hosted on intersections of the laneway where the kind of road and the lanes kind of meet. Other interventions explored included greening, biodiversity, lighting, and playful elements. This kind of use of a good practice example cards and a scaled map model of the laneway brought like this kind of playful interactive element to the project. Up until now, our engagement was solely relied on the lived experience and familiarity of the space to build a picture of the current sentiments. And now this tool kind of allowed for a co-designed analytical approach, which was flexible and tested ideas and approaches for potential interventions. So at a summer pop-up, these interventions were analysed by ourselves and trialled with the community. So this event drew in about 200 people from the estate and coincided with a street feast gathering. Children trialled scooter and bike trails through temporary playful surface markings. Planting activities with the local authorities, the Parks Department, allowed for sections of existing tarmac to be dug up, exposing the existing dormant seedbed and allowing new plants to grow. Feedback was captured through forms, drawings, and on the screen you can kind of see what we call our Spielmobile, that kind of unfolds and is a consultation device. But this kind of, showed these kind of good practice examples on the day as well, but also we showed kind of key urban design mechanisms demonstrating that like access to properties would not be affected by interventions that could effectively take place as well. Local cycling advocacy groups took people on looped trips on the lane, and local estate and the temporary chicanes were trialled so that vehicle traffic was slowed down as it got near the event activity. So all these kind of facilitated discussions and live trials allowed compromises to be tested and agreed before permanent works took place. So the community came together to not only see these trials, but to kind of view the lane as a kind of community togetherness tool. Phase 4 delivery. So this kind of was the implementation of what you see on screen was a kind of co-created community design brief. So the drawing was a key communicator in how both local authority and community could be transformed based on previous phase engagement. A series of short-term and long-term initiatives were identified as a result of this engagement, and they identified different local authority internal departments that could be coordinated with to enable regenerative changes from a bottom-up approach. Works included light touch play equipment, a notice board, rain gardens, narrowed crossings, surface artwork, and a gateway to structure. So like from some of the phase consultation, children expressed desire for more play translated into climbing frames and stepping stones. Teenagers expressed enthusiasm for color and vibrancy, which influenced the large-scale surface art made by visual artist Kinmix. So like the delivery challenges included it was like site management and temporary closures, which affected local access temporarily. But these were mitigated through advanced communication, signage, and coordination with the local residential association. Like across like all phases, children, young people, and adults, they weren't seen as tokenism, which often I've had experienced before, but they became these kind of active contributors or kind of revisiting steps or looking anew or kind of building that kind of capacity for co-design. So from like worksheets and workshops to like testing prototypes and influencing final features, the fingerprints of the community are kind of visible in this kind of renewed laneway. I'm just going to talk a little bit about consultation mechanisms. So we always wanted to be playful and honest about our approaches, and I won't go into all of what we did, but I want to highlight those that were important to the project. So our initial surveys to the community encouraged a bottom-up, emotion-led methodology that prioritized how residents felt about the space over technical design solutions. So a key guiding question was, and this was for any age, was how do you feel here and how would you like to feel? So this helped to acknowledge current conditions while it's also looking forward to the future of the laneway. As seen earlier, these kind of playful workshop mapping exercises acted as a form of dialogue. It helped to understand what the community wanted most and what location, as well as understanding what they did and did not or felt would be less effective at certain locations on the laneway. And it's amazing, like when you can get people around a board of different age groups and all it takes is pointing and showing and people can communicate in different ways. So this large board was brought to many workshops to show what currently existed on the lane. So alongside this map, there's kind of these inspiration cards showing good practice examples. So it allowed people to choose their favorite cards and place them on where they'd like to see them on the scale map with the knowledge of the lane's constraints and parameters. So from the card exercise and conversations over the map, key themes emerged, and this is where we kind of collated things into long and short-term solutions, which were eventually trialed at the summer pop-up. So some reflections on this. I suppose the process after all this was kind of the most important part, bringing children, young people, adults along the process, helped to build community capacity and lead to a place that had more resilience for that community and used by the community. The process was both structured in terms of project deadlines, parameters, and having evolving conversations was very much a form of unstructured play. Indirectly, we were designing around like this concept called ludus and padia. According to sociologist Kaiwa, play could be understood as situated between rules, ludus, and self-directed free play, padia, so in which players define their own rules. So this concept highlighted the importance of needing the playful balance in shaping the project. In prototyping this playful consultation, Love Our Laneways provided a template for participatory regeneration that's now influencing wider practice within Dún Laoghaire-Rathdown County Council. A direct outcome has been the Love Our Place project under the local authority's Central Active Travel programme, demonstrating institutional commitment to scaling this model. A similar phased approach was taken to 3 sites that are not too far away, ensuring that local voices were a part of the process. And yeah, like finally, like Love Our Laneways became this project that really incorporated a playful and inclusive engagements. It was very much one-to-one pilot at the time, and it has taken this time to really reflect on it. But it can really show that this engagement can transform neglected infrastructure into community assets. And by embedding young people and children's voices alongside those of older residents, students, families, and the local authority, the project created a safer, greener laneway and a replicable model for meaningful, joyful, and playful participation. If you want to find out more details, you can scan that QR code. You can find links to the kind of a wider report as well, or you can get in touch with me at cathal@playfulcity.com. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Gal. That was a real run through, but very comprehensive at the same time. There's many questions in there, so I don't think I'm going to try and pull them out now. But I suppose maybe in the Q&A is, I'd say that replicability of it, which really important, but also the evaluation of this project by the residents and actually the externally from it. So sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're different. So I think that'll be interesting to hear a bit about it. So lastly, Ramsey, would you like to take the floor and hear about all the incredible projects you've been doing, and especially with children and young people?
Thanks so much, Victoria. Hello, everybody. I am Ramsey Yassa. I'm an architect, public realm designer, and founding director at NOOMA Studio. And I'm here today to talk to you about a little bit about NOOMA and some of our work. We were very privileged to have been awarded the Best Built Environment Practice Award at the Thornton Education Trust Awards recently. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our practice, a very light touch on a couple of our previous conceptual projects, and then take you through a project of ours, Leather Market Gardens, in which we developed child-friendly places. So if you bear with me. Okay. Are my slides visible to everybody? Right. Okay. Thank you. So here's a snapshot of some of the team. And one of the things that really matter to us as a practice is very much about the team and the people that come together to make it. And we have built a methodology as a studio around that, which we call collective personal storytelling. And that methodology percolates through to all of our projects and our approach generally to how we approach projects as a studio. And that idea comes from the premise that the many parts make the whole. And we're really interested in both our individual stories and our individual lived experiences and how they can come in to contribute to our practice and the work we do, but also to our projects. And that then is manifested in a number of different ways. This diagram here captures an aspiration for how we want our practice to operate as an organization. And often we like to think of our practice as being a round table where everybody sits around and everybody has equal value and equal weight around that round table to contribute to ideas and the progression of the studio. And our manifesto as a studio is about empowering future generations with the right to joyful spaces that support human thriving and well-being. And this is really a manifesto that's based on a real belief in the importance of representation in the built environment and built environment practices. So we genuinely believe that the people should be able to see themselves reflected in their public spaces and in their buildings and in their housing. And our process has three core facets to it. So collaboration is really key. This is an early image of our studio, actually, where you can see that one of the things we have in our studio is a fully dedicated pin-up and review area. So a big part of our process and our approach is about collaboration and putting together opportunities to work on things together and problem solve collectively. And the other really core component to our work is narrative. And often we're asked, why is narrative important in design and architecture? And that's largely in part due to narrative being very human. So narrative helps us really humanize our work and empathize with who we're engaging with and who we're producing places and work for. And the other core component for us is about active dialogue. And that's both an active dialogue internally, but also an active dialogue externally with the industry and with other peers and collaborators. So our collective personal storytelling methodology is really a methodology for co-creation, and it's one that we apply in a lot of our work. And it's usually applied through an art practice. So there is typically some kind of creative or artistic basis to that co-creation methodology. And our slogan as a studio is designed for public good. And one of the things that we really focus on is a range of work that is about the benefits of society. And that ranges from large-scale regeneration work through to projects of social housing, such as this project we're doing for Hackney Council currently, through to more cultural pieces, such as Meanwhile interventions and a mobile play and culture programme for the Museum of London. This is a very early project of ours that captures the idea of collective personal storytelling and was really quite formative in the development of that. A Story of Togetherness is an artwork that we developed during the pandemic in 2021. And the idea of the project was around collecting construction waste from a local construction waste recycling plant and trying to turn the product of that plant into something of community and public benefit within our neighborhood where our studio was based. So we would collect construction waste from O'Donovan's recycling plant, load it into the NOOMA truck, take it over to the NOOMA lab and develop this into an artwork and a new product. And we then dispersed that artwork and we posted pieces of it to friends of the studio at a time when isolation was a very dominant narrative, as a symbol of hope for an opportunity for us to be able to reconnect and come back together to collectively recreate the artwork in the future. And that concept is visible also in projects like this, which is the Phoenix Road Performing Gardens, where we undertook a meanwhile project in Somerstown, in a place in central London between Euston and King's Cross, and created a framework for community programming, for community-led programming that could infill and activate the street over the course of a month. And it was hugely successful, with events like the Storyteller hosting storytelling events, and also local anarchists running events like the Decolonizing Lunch, which was probably the most attended event. So here's the main project I wanted to talk about today, which is Leather Market Gardens and the Tyres Estate, which is a community-led urban regeneration that we've done for Southwark Council. This project has been a labour of love of 4 years. We have, through the development of this project, we have done over 35 consultation events and worked with a very broad number of stakeholders in its development. When we started engaging with residents and local people within the Bermondsey area, one of the things we noticed was how strongly people spoke of memory. Memories tied to architectural elements, to materials, and to particular corners of the gardens. And many of those memories were childhood memories, experiences formed in this space that stayed with them. So for us, this project really became about memory and place, or more specifically, memory in place. The idea that childhood spatial experiences are what form identity and belonging, that connection to place is not created through signage or branding, but through lived interaction over time. At the same time, through consultation, we received very clear feedback that residents didn't want Leather Market Gardens to become a playground. They didn't want a dedicated play space. And there were concerns about noise, loitering, and about protecting the existing character of the gardens as a calm intergenerational space. So the ask of us was not to design play spaces, and our task was to design actually child-friendly spaces. Now, one of the key things about Leather Market is that it's a very porous urban neighbourhood with lots of overlapping routes and connection areas. And the project was formed through 8 intervention zones across a site area, a red boundary area of over 2 acres. And those 8 intervention zones were spread out quite thinly, but were really about creating different areas, creating greater inclusion, accessibility, and creating intergenerational spaces. So for us, it was about creating playable neighborhoods and integrating memory and place, identity and belonging, inclusivity, as I mentioned, and also intergenerational spaces. And one of our approaches is to developing playable areas is around, or playable elements is through the introduction of simple forms and ergonomics that invite misuse and invite playability of simple architectural elements. So the community garden, for example, is a genuinely intergenerational space. Through the 35 consultations, we'd managed to form an allotment committee, which was one of the real kind of successes of the engagement process. It includes planters at different heights to accommodate different ages and physical abilities, and it invites shared cultivation and shared care. At the entrance wall in Zone 1, the 2 brick depth wall to this area, to this retaining wall, provides a perfect dimension for sitting, but also for walking along, climbing, and informal play. The pergola and rose garden bring another layer. The pergola acts as both a spatial and social activator. It frames the rose garden, hosts activity during the Bermondsey Street Festival, and at other times offers a space for gathering or quiet reflection. Roses are deeply connected to memory, particularly through scent. This is evidence that scent can trigger recall, especially for older generations. So while older people may connect to the rose garden through memory and well-being, children simultaneously form their own memories through interaction in the same space. It becomes a shared intergenerational environment. The village hall planter extends this idea further. It's conceived as an ecological infrastructure, biodiverse, climate resilient, using recycled construction waste as a growing substrate. It includes bee posts scaled to human proportion on a perimeter edge designed for sitting, including wheelchair access. But critically, it was co-designed with pupils from Snowfields Primary School. The children were asked to visit the gardens and bring back an observational memory. Moss, leaves, mushrooms, bricks, foxes, birds. They translated these pixelated artworks, which informs the pattern of the granite skirts. In that sense, childhood memory is literally embedded into the fabric of the gardens. This was some of the workshop material that we asked the pupils of the school to use to develop the concepts. So really, what makes a child-friendly place? For us, it's around identity and belonging, and that's something that can be generated and developed through process and engagement, through design and development. But it's also about playable neighborhoods. It's about everyday elements within the public realm that can be reinterpreted and misused in order to form opportunities for memory. And it's also about those in-between spaces. It's the thresholds between somebody's window and the street, or the in-between space that is activated by a pergola. And we believe it's those in-between spaces in which community can happen. And finally, we also think it's about intergenerational spaces, and it's around having spaces in which you can have multiple generations sharing with one another and not feeling excluded. And that for us really is what creates a sense of safety and connectedness within public spaces. Thank you.
So if you'd like to stop sharing, that would be great.
Bye, Victoria.
If you can stop sharing, that'd be great.
Bear with me.
Okay.
There we go.
So I don't have everybody up on mine. I've only got 2 of us up rather than all 4 of us up. Can you see all 5 of us? Or Cal, can you see everybody? All these speakers?
I can see everyone that's speaking.
Okay,
Yeah.
fine. It's just my end. James seems to have kind of priority with his colleagues here on my screen. Glad it's not just me. It's incredible to have so many different ways to look at, but actually quite some similarities within them. And I think for me, I suppose one of the things that'd be interesting to hear from the speakers is I'm going to say the evaluation, but how do people feel long-term afterwards from outside as well? So do you feel how do you create a continual ownership of these spaces that's been created by a group of people? But as we know, people come and go, events happen. So how do you retain those within it? So what are those challenges or opportunities, always thinking it positive, to actually ensure that it has a long-term opportunity, it stays there for a long time? So I don't know who wants to pick that one up.
I can give a little insight. There's so much to be said about like that community stewardship. So whereas like we were hosting and facilitating events, but ultimately we wanted the community to get involved with how it planted, or how there was kind of cleaning schedules, or using the community there that were going to be there for the long term was really important for like the Love Our Laneways project, because we knew we wouldn't be there for a long time afterwards as well. But if we can incorporate different features or different mechanisms that allowed for the community to use their space, you knew it would be hopefully perpetually be upkept by the community as well. And that's relating to the kind of laneway, the planting and the play features along it as well. Yeah.
Okay. And James, from your perspective, seeing it's been yours is really one of those, how do you manage to maintain it over such a long time, I think?
Absolutely. I guess it's slightly different in that we are the community or communities, we're not going anywhere, really. So we don't have that kind of similar kind of exit strategy, I think, in a way to think about, but that community stewardship is definitely something that is embedded in Dwellbeing since the very beginning. I think some of the things that we found that are working are actually involving people in not just the design and the ideas, but actually the making of it. So it's give an example of that on this plot of land near the multi-use games area that we're currently working on. A few years ago, we worked with an artist in residence on site, and one of the outcomes of that was a community wildflower meadow. Our members were involved in physically digging the turf and sowing the seeds, and there's now a working group formed that looks after the care of that meadow and builds that into our cycles of community activities. There's a lot of activity and celebrations that happen around that, as well as more art projects and things like that. And the young people that worked on this a few years ago come along, and it's their meadow. They remember planting it in the dark in November by torchlight. So again, I think Ramsey mentions like building in those memories. I think that's definitely the tool that we're using.
Ramsey, with your one, because I was just thinking about the planting and things, you've created there's a group there who will look after the planting or the greening and things. Do you see there's an issue long term, or do you think it's now embedded within that community that they want to ensure that this continues? Because we know one of the issues can be that these sort of public spaces start well and all the planting, etc., but over time they get not necessarily destroyed, but they go in decline a bit. So, kind of your thoughts?
Yeah, I think unfortunately it's the kind of thing that you can't really control. You can absolutely encourage a particular governance and a particular programmatic approach to spaces that are based on community-led structures, but quite often they're very fragile, and quite often they're led by one or two people. It's one or two key significant people within a community who are pushing forward the allotment committee and are fully committed to it and organizing and pulling people together. And they can fall apart and they can fall away with time. And I think that that does happen. And I think as designers, there are some things that are within our control through the process, which does come back to a focus on this idea of how do you create identity and belonging and memory in place. And I think that we have a few tools at our disposal of being able to achieve that, one of which being the process, so that the actual process of creating public places. But also, it does also come down to the very design of those spaces and how a design of an object might invite you to interact with it in a particular way, or how the materiality or finish of something might produce a certain acoustic quality or a certain memorable shape or form in a place that also helps develop memory and belonging over time. But yeah, it's unfortunate that the governance element is not something that we can fully control in the long term.
But I think it's just being aware of that when you're actually developing this kind of project, isn't it? So if you're aware of it, your expectations and everybody else's expectations also are more managed because of this as well. Thank you. In the chat room, there are several questions here. One of them is saying, first of all, thanks to all the presenters from Claire Bond. She's interested to know what the speaker's thoughts are on the role of local authority when considering long-term change through these projects. And these are all, in effect, we're in the public sector with all these. But of course, if we could ask another question, it's about the private sector. But let's say with the local authority who has a long-term interest or should have a long-term interest. So I don't know who wants to pick up on this first.
I'm very happy to say a few words of that. So local authorities are absolutely intrinsic. Like we, through this process of just use it as a means to build those relationships. They own the land, they maintain the land, they control all the sort of public liability over it and to it and from it. And so, yeah, we've had to just develop those relationships. Largely have to play through their systems. We're going to have to work and develop things that are going to have to be approved and tested. And that just costs through this to our other work that we do as a practice, work in a built environment just costs a lot of money, and we're having to work with Newcastle City Council to unlock some funding that then will allow us to take those small steps to access the larger pots of funding. I think they're absolutely crucial. So I think it's really great to see the city council sort of step a little bit out of its comfort zone. It's not something they do anywhere else, nothing we've come across, certainly in the northeast of England. So I think it's very much, trying to find new ways of working together. I think it's been really great. We've tried to involve them as much as possible in this process, and they've been quite reciprocal, I think.
No, it's great. It's good. It's great to hear those things. It gives belief that this can happen. It's not just an abstract. Cathal, Ramsey, do you want to come in? Because obviously infected you as well. And we're in Dublin and we're in Ireland. Does it make any difference? So we all have the same issue wherever we are.
Yeah. I do think it does sound very familiar, these kind of issues. And with Love Our Laneways, we particularly we're lucky to have a really good champion within the local authority, because it was a director of services that was really leading it, and we had some really good parks department and landscape architects that became part of the process. And often these were the 2-3 people we were meeting all the time. Now, there is a flip side to this, that when we had like interdepartmental meetings and we walked the site, and actually was like, how easy is it for you to change your cleaning route from here to here? And it suddenly the realization of this very siloed experience, or this siloed nature of council as well. And that is a challenge as well, because internally people maybe want to stick to their own familiar ways as well, and it takes a lot of encouragement. As much work as with the community, there was a lot of work internally within the local authority as well. But yeah, definitely if you have a champion that is kind of really pushing the button all the time, it really helped our side. Yeah.
And I think just with that, just looking at time, but I think we all talk about champions, but the thing is how to embed it in the culture of the organization, because champions come and go, but you really need to embed. And I suppose that's the next step for, in a way, the built environment. How do we discuss this with local authorities who are in effect the clients in this, and see there's opportunities to create something, perhaps, as say, out of their comfort zone, or to actually just think about there are different ways of approaching it. So it's interesting to see that. One last question, I'm just realizing on time as usual. There's one from Rose Latter saying, about to start an art project, design project with our local high school of 108 year 8 kids, or so 8-year-old year 8 kids. Any tips gratefully received. So there's any quick tips that want to put in to help Rose within this activity? She's just starting on 101 time. That's great.
Not to overspeak too much, but get ready to kind of lose any structure that you would put in place. I did that like primary school like consultation. It was like baptism by fire, I'll be honest with you. It was. I had everything in place. I'm going to ask this and this, and I threw it out the window. But that was kind of playful, and there was such meaningful conversation came from it. So it does work out in one sense. Yeah.
Go from plan A to plan Z, and you might get there somewhere along the line. So I just looking at, as say, at the time, are there any reflections of any of the speakers who just want to add anything that we haven't talked about, or just reflecting what's been discussed? Ramsey, go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really inspiring to see from all the projects today is an approach that really is rooted in a philosophy that's based on the idea of creating stronger societal connections and community connections in neighborhoods through project work and through public space design. And I think there's a lot to be said for that. And I think that question about local authorities is a really key one, because I think we really do need local authorities to champion that approach. And they need to champion it through strategic vision and through broader principles. I think that is what local authorities bring to the table, even though they might have, less aspiration, or they may have kind of structural issues with regards to being able to move quickly or innovate in certain areas. They do bring that broader objective, which is about community and neighborhoods, to projects.
Thank you. And I think that's to follow on from that, in effect, that the Inspire Future Generation Awards is about inspiring future generations and empowering children and young people to have a voice about their environment. And what we found when we first started, we were realizing there was not-for-profits would tend to do this kind of work. And then we realized we saw practices really starting to engage in this, which I think 10 years ago, we would have had much more difficulty seeing that. But one of the things we then wanted to look at was local authorities, because they're the key stakeholders in this. So they're the public and then developers on the other. Those are the clients who actually are going to decide whether they're going to make this type of positive change. So we feel we need to always work to support those groups, but also to show examples. And in fact, Inspire Future Generations is about creating case studies that they can then reference or gives them some ideas to take forward. So with that, I would like to just mention, obviously, the 2026 awards will be coming up in the summer. We haven't put them online. We do want as many as possible to come through. It's really important to share and celebrate all the work you're all doing. And also to encourage you and the audience, if you know of other projects, especially in, say, local authorities or even developers, do actually either let us know or just suggest to them to look at our website. So with that, I'd like to just remind everybody in the next TET Dialogue, so it's the third one in our row, which will actually be looking research and resources. So really putting children at the centre of place. What role can evidence, guidance and digital tools help shaping places that better reflect the needs of children and young people? So we've always talked about evidence. We need evidence to prove that it does do the job to help those local authorities and developers and other clients to actually take that step to say, yes, there's evidence here. It does work. Don't be scared about this. It's been done before in part. So I hope everybody joins us on the 12th of May at the same time. But in the meantime, I'd just like to thank everybody here, the speakers and the audience, for the great questions for this event. And I hope you continue joining in with us one way or another through the awards. And also just to remind, especially the year 8, that we have the Imagine Awards, which is actually specifically for school teachers. It's about school settings as opposed to, as we say, out of school in placemaking. So we really are interested in ensuring that we are talking about the education about the built environment within schools as well as out of schools as well. So again, thank you very much. Have a good evening and look forward to seeing you again. Thanks very much. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.